Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you happen to be across the world, and welcome. Welcome to this G2E Asia online conference, the first G2E Asia online conference being held in conjunction with IAG's game platform. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Andrew Scott, and I am the Vice Chairman and CEO of Inside Asian Gaming, and I'll be your host and guiding you through our event today. G2E Asia Online will be having 4 events, 1 per month over the next 4 months. So 1 in July, 1 in August, 1 in September, and 1 in October. And this is the first one. And I'm delighted that they've partnered up with IAG for this first event. IAG, of course, has been our lead media partner for G2E Asia for many, many years. And this also represents the game number 5 for us, which is actually our 6th event, because we had a game number 0. We have an absolutely great turnout today. Last we checked, there was 430 people registered for this event, and there's probably been a few more come in the last few minutes, so we might have 450 or so for today's event. Just want to say a few words before I introduce the speakers about what's going on at the moment. Obviously, our industry has been decimated by the whole coronavirus and COVID-19 events, and we've seen online events like what we're doing today spring up kind of out of nowhere from all sorts of places. So this is a great opportunity, for us to get together in a time where we really do need to speak. I guess our industry, the gaming industry in Asia, has been hit certainly as hard as any other industry. I mean, I've noticed that companies, there have been a small number of companies that have benefited from what's happened, like Zoom and various online companies. There's been companies that have been hurt, but maybe hurt a little. And then there are companies that have been hurt a lot. And that's certainly our industry. And that seems to fall into an acronym known as the beach industries. I'll see if I can remember it off by heart, but bookings, entertainment, events, offline events, airlines, casinos, cruises, and hotels. And if you look at an integrated resort, what have we got? We've got, well, people tend to travel to get there. We've got hotels, people book. We've got casinos. It's just about a perfect storm. So obviously our industry's been hit very, very badly, and we need to respond to this. So today's theme of innovation is a great one for this. I'd like to move on now to introduce our speakers. So we have for the keynote, Frederic Winckler, who is Chief Creative and Brand Officer of Melco Resorts and Entertainment. Give us a wave, Freddie. There he is. Michael Cheers, Sales Director for Asia for IGT. Michael. Alan Hsu, the AVP of Business Development for Jumbo Technology over there in Taiwan. Hi, Alan. And John Van Wood, Senior Manager for System Sales for IGT. Hi, John. So what's going to happen today is we're going to have, first of all, this introduction, which I've just about finished, and then we'll go straight into a keynote from Frederic Winckler, which will be 15 minutes. And after Frederic's keynote speech, we'll have a panel of 35 minutes between myself, Frederic, Michael, and Alan. Then we'll go straight into 2 10-minute Infocus sessions, one from John at IGT and one from Alan at Jumbo. And finally, we'll have a 15-minute Q&A to wrap up, and I'll say a few words at the end. So we should be finishing at, the plan is to finish at 5:35 Macau time, China time. So hopefully we can stick on track and get you all out of the office and home for dinner. So just about the Q&A, this is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting, so it's slightly different. There's a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to type your questions in there, and they'll accumulate over the next hour and a quarter or so. And then when we get to the Q&A session at the end, I'll go through and ask those questions. Okay, so I think that's about me done. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Freddie for the keynote, and take it away, Frederic.
Thank you, Andrew. And thanks everyone for joining in. Can you hear me properly? Yes? Okay, great. So thanks everyone for joining in. So innovation.
Okay, I'm not hearing Frederic.
Okay. I am not on mute.
I'm hearing him.
Yeah, I've got him loud and clear as well, Andrew.
All right, guys. Well, I'm still not hearing Frederic. I see a few people doing this. Are you hearing Frederic? You are. Well, I don't know why I'm not. Okay. So I'll let him talk.
See, it is 2020. Can't go as smooth as we normally want. So innovation, innovation has to be probably one of the biggest buzzwords of the last 20 years. It's on everyone's lips and almost on every company's vision statement. Yet somehow, 20 years after the year 2000, this is when we were meant to be in jumpsuits up in space, people are still talking about doing their digital revolution or digital transformation. Well, 2020 is the year everyone gets thrown in the pool. I'm Franco-English and I came from the luxury world. So this obviously makes me an extremely arrogant, pompous hipster. So I'm not going to give you a lesson in gaming. None of you want that. Instead, what I would like to try and do is to share with you some of the things I've learned about innovation in my career and the different worlds that I've been in. And it would be crazy not to look at it today through what's going on. All the questions that you're asking yourselves: when will guests come back? What will change? How do we as an industry need to change? Typically, we would learn from previous crises, say 9/11 or SARS or the Great Financial Crisis. Only this time, it's all of these combined in one. We've got health, economic, geopolitical, almost war crisis. So we're on our own here. But let's be clear, whether we like it or not, in the next 18 months are going to bring a huge amount of change. Huge amount of change. Look around the world today, you can see change happen, and things that were long overdue, I think. Boring department stores and businesses that resisted change are going bankrupt. On the other hand, you've got Amazon, Alibaba, WeChat, Zoom, Fortnite, Netflix, Deliveroo, or in our own world, Flutter, having a field day. But it's not just the internet giants. What's interesting is small, agile businesses adapted to closure in a matter of days. If, like me, you were starved of your gym, it's likely you reverted to online coaching, live sessions on social media becoming your everyday, before you ended up finally subscribing to a new online service. And before Lululemon bought Mirror, a small startup, for $500 million. See how innovative this is, paper. So what can we learn from the last few months? There's obviously a huge amount of things that we need to look at, but given I have 15 minutes, I'd like to look at 5 key areas of innovation. The first thing that I think we need to consider is there has been what is really a global coup d'etat. Digital has taken everything over, everything. Whether you're old, young, geek or not, everyone is now officially online. And they were forced on there. And you know what? They like it. And not just for buying tomatoes from which side of the ocean. They're watching concerts like the one from BTS, the Korean brand, that attracted 700,000 people online. Or this, Travis Scott on Fortnite, a concert that attracted 12 million paying gamers. And it wasn't just the mass. Last weekend, a Francis Bacon painting sold for $89 million in Christie's first ever global live auction. So it's online or it's ugly. The second thing we can learn is that those who will walk back through our doors will be digital animals. Speed, efficiency, ease, and no barriers is what they'll expect. So processes, internal department comebacks will be intolerable to them. I think everyone will be well advised to tear down those walls, as Mr. Reagan said. So start eradicating queues, paper vouchers, processes. The third thing is that they've got used to bad habits, things getting to them, and not the reverse. Their music, their food, their entertainment, their work, they basically travel the world on social media. And so some companies reacted, like Airbnb, who was quick to react, offering new services, allowing you to go on guided tours, to go and see Chernobyl, or to go and see these cooking class by these drag queens in Amsterdam, all from the comfort of your couch. The guests that will come back will be simply more selfish and more demanding. So make your room their room, your event their event, and your salon their salon. And if they come back more selfish, the last 6 months reminded them that they're mortal. making them mega health conscious. And I think we see it every day. And that's the fourth area of innovation, and maybe the more obvious, but the hardest. It's going to be about crowd control. It's true that when China reopened, crowds started traveling again, but high value patrons, the first one to come back, the more valuable, will want crowd control. They will flee places with big crowds to one that can provide more intimacy. They'll be looking for a new concept I call the trusted crowds. How we frame that will probably make a huge difference to becoming their place of choice. And when they'll come back, they'll be looking for guarantees of a safe environment. Tell me that in the last few months, you haven't looked at the surface wondering if it was really clean or if the air in the room was filtered and how it was filtered. I was watching last week a marketing video by Qatar Airways that was showing how everything was incredibly sanitized. But what was interesting is part of it was reassuring, and really it also raised a huge amount more questions. When you think of IRs, cards, chips, key cards, tables, slots, chairs, thousands of potential things to worry about. And if millions of people in France became Charlie after the terrorist attack on Charlie Hebdo, I think we've all now become this gentleman, you know, not Andrew, Mr. Clean, Mr. Proper. But there has to be a better way through innovation than all of us cleaning things. And the fifth area that I'd like to focus on today is the way that we speak to the audience, communication. And I think that would, again, radically change. It would be tempting to continue talking like it was 2019. But over the last 6 months, many brands around the world have made huge mistakes, either pathetically attempting to show empathy in GUI ads like Uber did, or ignoring what was going on. One of the world's largest luxury brands produced a digital fashion show only a few weeks ago, as if nothing was actually happening. And the audience didn't sit silently by. They reacted very strongly, dealing out comments against the brand. Others managed to navigate these dangerous waters actually reasonably well. LVMH, for example, turned its perfume production into making sanitizing gels that were in short supply. Whilst we at Melco sent our colleagues to volunteer and help the community. Zara asked models to photograph themselves at home, joining the audience in lockdown. When we were thinking of the reopening, I originally thought that people would come out with a roaring urge to go out, celebrate and party, a bit like after SARS in Hong Kong. And to be honest, we did until I think end of February, until the second wave started. And then it became clear that this was not going to be the case. We have an audience that has gone through significant trauma. They've suffered physically, emotionally, economically, and all of them very practically. On social media, some celebrities like Madonna in this video was flaunting their pain to be locked down in their $1 million homes. And suddenly she found herself, like a lot of them, at the receiving end of social media rage. And we saw a radical shift to celebrities and KOLs having a more authentic, almost normal tone. It was fascinating to watch. I don't know if you did Lady Gaga's One World concerts, where every one of the stars there were super carefully choreographing their performance from very normal surroundings in their homes. Yes, it was the Rolling Stones, but in a small room or small rooms. And Ronnie, just here, was drumming on suitcases. So I think we're in the middle of a huge shift in the way we communicate, more authentic, more human. How we do this without going down the sewers is going to be very tricky. How we do this while remaining attractive will separate the best from the rest. And so while no crystal ball exists, I think we all know that after the first wave of client return, behaviors will have changed. Take, once again, the luxury world. After an enthusiastic reopening in China, reality is settling in. Yes, the business in China is up from last year, but overall, it's still only 1/3 of what it was with the Chinese globally, only 1/3. So our clients will be back. They'll be more demanding than ever. And I see 5 key areas for innovation. We talked about digital everything. We mean everything. Barrierless service, bringing experiences to them, controlling trusted crowds and healthy everything, and a new way of communicating. All of these areas crying for innovation. And believe me, innovation does not belong to a department that has that title. Today, ideas and R&D are everywhere because it's all about an attitude. And it's found in people that are brave enough to ask one very, very simple question. Why? why are we still using cash? Why do I need to stand up from my chair? Why do hotels make me check in at a desk? Why do you not know what I love? Sounds simple. So what's holding us back? Well, even with the pandemic, why does it still feel like so many are being dragged screaming and kicking into the digital age? I think the primary killer is actually fear. Some of that fear is technophobia. We're all familiar with it. How many of you, for example, all of us today on Zoom refuse to turn your webcams on Zoom as we're having meetings as well? It's amazing today. We have this and we don't use it. But look at the screen you're viewing me on now. It's likely that you spend more time with it than anything, or actually probably even anyone else. And still, we're afraid of it. PCs, phones, tablets are accused of making people antisocial and being an intrusive nuisance. But our kids' school might have been significantly better prepared for online learning if adults hadn't been so wary of screens. In 1818, Thomas Jefferson described printed fiction as leading to, and I quote him, bloated imagination, sickly judgment, and disgust towards life. Yeah, that was the book. 80 years later, it became radio, then TV, then the internet, and now look at what's happening with 5G. Sure, it's far easier to criticize and kill rather than have to get up and do something. And yes, most innovations fail, but so do organizations who do not. Take Kodak, they invented digital photography, and they're now in the cemetery for looking down at it. So it's not enough to ask the right questions. You also need to kill the cynicism. This means never accepting from contributors it will never work, I don't like this. You know, those who work with me know that I'm not interested in what people actually don't like, only in what catches their attention and what excites them. And if it scares someone in the group, well, that's often a sign that something is worthwhile pursuing. That's why the most interesting innovation happens either with a fierce, visionary, and lucky leader, I'm lucky enough to have one, or when you're forced to. Look at how we've had to adapt to working from home. Despite research showing remote workers are more productive, most bosses were opposed to flexible working practices. So when we were forced into remote access, there were very few good tools to use. Yes, Zoom went from 10 million users to 300 million users in April, but the interface, honestly, is lousy, basic, and the service and security, very glitchy. What the hell happened since Skype? And that was 17 years ago. Probably actually the most interesting thing on Zoom is this. This is a llama farm in California, and you can invite a llama for $100 into your Zoom meeting. But I still have to do this on paper. So, contrary to general belief, innovation is not necessarily expensive. It's often centered around the perfection of something that already exists by coming at it from a different angle. Big investments normally come down way further down the track once the concept is proven, but the idea is what comes first. Look at Steve Jobs. He didn't invent the computer or the smartphone. His genius was in taking things that already existed and making them better. Like Google, they didn't invent the search engine, they perfected it. Same with Tesla and the electric car, Dyson and the vacuum cleaner, Amazon and online shopping. All innovators, all perfecting a product or process. You can bet actually that the technology that will drive the big shifts in the years to come already exists, and all it needs is an idea to perfect it. So all these startups that I've mentioned, interestingly, started in a garage with no money or very little. Ideas came before the banks. Some, like Google, take today a balanced approach. Yes, be radical free thinkers, but as an adjunct to core business. And they have a rule called the 7-20-10. 70% of resources are about improving the existing offering, 20% on adjacent business, and 10% to blue sky ideas. And that's the 10% that leads an online search engine building self-driving cars. But like now, innovation can also be born from opportunity. See the rise of Netflix. Actually, what's interesting is Netflix started in 1997 renting DVDs. And after watching a small startup called Amazon selling books online, what the innovation they made was to turn to subscription, DVD movie rentals by mail. Yes. In 2000, the founders approached Blockbuster, which was then the leader of DVDs, and offered them the chance to buy Netflix for $50 million as an instant solution to their lack of online presence. Blockbuster, who had very solid research, believed that people liked and even preferred going into the stores to choose a movie. So they said no. Well, Netflix now have 180 million subscribers and they're valued at close to $200 billion, all through opportunity-based innovation. So whilst we might all be shivering in the middle of this coronavirus storm, we need to look at it as an opportunity to innovate. Put yourself in the shoes of those digital savvy guests who will be returning. Because if they start asking themselves why, you're in trouble. Why are they asking me to do this? Why can't I get their thing from here? Why doesn't this plug into that? Why do I have to go over there? Why do I need one of those? So drop the fear, ask questions. Innovation is not a department, it's not a budget, and it's not Star Trek. It's about you and your team's killing desire to make things better. And nobody has the definite answer, which is the great thing. One thing is for sure though, don't be a blockbuster. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Frederic. It was very, very interesting. I scribbled a few notes down for our panel that we're about to go into now. You mentioned the glitchiness of Zoom. I apologize for talking over you at the beginning there. All I had to do was turn my volume on and off again, and suddenly you came back. So absolutely. Yeah, that was very, very interesting. So let's move into the panel now. So Frederic and myself, Alan from Jumbo and Michael. And in the interests of, as you mentioned, Frederic, in your keynote, authenticity and normalness, I will tell everybody here in the 450 or so that are watching us that I have some pre-prepared questions for you guys. But as you were talking, Freddie, I scribbled down some notes as well. So we'll cross between them and let's keep this very free-flowing. So please, any of you guys, feel free to jump in and answer a question. A lot of the questions I won't put to any specific person. I'll just throw out there. But Freddie, I'll give you a rest for a second because you've just spoken for a quarter of an hour, and go to the suppliers and ask just a very open question to begin with. So how has the whole COVID thing that we've been in at the moment affected your product development? We're talking about innovation today, so your whole product development life cycle and process. Alan, Michael?
I'm happy to answer that one if you like, Andrew, to start with. So I think the reality for us is the volume of games that we as a company would normally put in to the market has certainly reduced a percentage. But what we've done is look at the way that we can then best define games by region, simply because of the fact we believe that for a period of time, it will become more of a localized market due to restrictions in international travel. And that localized player is very important for the continued success of all of our operator partners out there by providing the style of game, the right product, the right style of jackpot startups, whether it be a link-based game, etc., so that those local players feel value. And a lot of them are actually going to IRs, some of them for the first time, because they wouldn't normally go and visit those places. They would normally gamble or play at their local venues. But because there's more offers available and an opportunity to go without these so-called crowds, that we find that game design, localizing game is critical. The other parts of our innovation, the way we're looking at, is definitely in our systems field. And that is looking at how we mobilize, or we make the gaming experience mobile in relation to play a card, using a mobile phone to log in to the machine, to tap onto the machine, using kiosk functionality in relation to not having the player to physically go up to the kiosk. They can utilize the app of the property they're involved in. They can check their point balance. They can enter a random draw, and they can check on the promotions, everything that a normal kiosk might do. So there's some of the things that we've been looking at innovating from an IGT side.
Alan, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh yeah. Well, for us, since the pandemic, we noticed that if operation will resume, we have to reduce the chance of person-to-person contact. So by providing protection or notifier, as what Michael had mentioned earlier, by using the system, to notify that the machine needs to be clean after a use, that becomes very important to us in terms of development. And also, as mentioned earlier by Frederic, digital. that will be the trend, and that is the future trend, and that's what we're seeing now. So we believe land-based, it's one of the income, but digital will be the future, and we're also working on that right now. Thank you.
And working between suppliers and operators. I mean, Michael, are you talking to operators about, you know, obviously it's a time now where they've got a little bit of time to sit down and have some meetings while they're so-called waiting and thinking, but there's a lot of thinking going on at the moment about how things are going to be when we come back. Are you going and meeting with, well, meeting over Zoom maybe, meeting with operators and talking this through with them about new ways of doing things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're still fortunate here in Macau that we have some of the leading larger organisations represented across here, both from a local historical basis and international providers. But and where we can meet with them and do meet with them, we are regularly talking. And it's about, I think that what we simply sort of try to say is, in our product and technology portfolio, these are the range of products that we traditionally had available, which were very much a service edge-based style of product, but how do we then help you, customer, adapt that to a safer gaming environment? And I think that that's certainly something that we're doing. The other thing that we're talking to the customers about is to say, if we're going to live in a restricted footprint environment with the social distancing of one off, how do we help you and advise you on your bank design? How do we look at, say, reducing a bank size as an example to, instead of having 8 and 10 machine banks, how do we create a simpler 6 machine bank whereby we can have the 4 corners turned on and the two machines in the middle as being like the filler machine, for the want of a better word, a better term, but that would then at least allow that we can have that, so the link games and the high profit games on the machine, on the floor, utilise more, available to players a little bit more. So banking, technology, taking service to be more positive in relation to sanitisation, they're the sorts of things we're talking about.
So as you're talking there, I'm scribbling down a few notes here, and I want to try and summarise it in a few words, maybe give the audience a takeaway at the end of it, and some of the themes that are emerging, right? So obviously, this whole concept, and Freddie, you touched on it in your keynote, was that there's a whole concept of trusted crowds and space and distancing. And I find myself now walking down the street, if there's somebody walking towards me, I try to bisect the edge of the footpath and that person, and I'm conscious of going, well, I want to put the maximum amount of space between me and them. Now, you translate that to a gaming floor, right? So all of a sudden, we've taken this space, which traditionally we've always made full of crowds and happy and busy and people high-fiving or whatever, and now we're superimposing on top of that this sort of space and distancing idea. Freddie, do you have any comments on that, or like how that, because we're social creatures, aren't we? We go to integrated resorts to have fun and enjoy each other's company. So part of our brain is going, I've got to keep apart from people. Part of our brain is going, well, I'm here to have fun and to interact socially.
Yes, but I think, you know, what you're going to find is something actually super developed in around Asia is a lot of the salon and games, whether it's in the, whether it's in on the gaming floor, whether it's in some of the clubs, in some of the restaurants, things that are way more controlled. And I think going to places that we're able to control better, at least at the start, will be super important. I think the second thing is going to be about, the use again of technology, and there's apps today that can help you trace COVID if it's there. How do you guarantee that's contrary to what happened in Vegas? The people who are on the other side are also wearing the mask and being careful. I mean, at least in Asia, people are way more disciplined than in the States for this. But I think the other thing is maybe this is not the first pandemic. Maybe this is something that's going to continue. Maybe even if it's not the first pandemic, I think people will remain more cautious than they tended to be. Especially if we have new waves coming. So I think, and again, these are stupid things, but rather than just trying to separate everything, which kind of works short term, maybe there are ways of detecting viruses that go on surfaces. Maybe there's ways of self-cleaning. My health club has something where I just put my phone onto a thing with UV lights, and that's meant to kill any virus. Not sure how that works, but it's things like this, maybe that we need to look at, that of services that self-clean, that is a bit more radical research and technology into spaces. And I think that's because I think what we're seeing now is here to stay for a while. So, I think short term it's going to be about how we associate people, how you can create crowds that trust each other, and that includes obviously our personnel, so that people feel comfortable playing. You can make sure that the moment you trace, you can stop anything. Otherwise, it's the closure again, which nobody wants. So, I think there'll be, and I think again, there'll be a huge amount of technology and R&D coming this way, sure.
It's interesting what you say about perhaps continuing pandemics. I mean, as a media guy, I'm an avid reader of articles being published. And I read an article recently that looked at pandemics over the last several hundred years, and they're becoming more and more and more frequent. And they list, I can't remember all the reasons. I remember one of them was the ease of international travel being so much cheaper now that if a pandemic gets, or if a virus gets going somewhere, it can just race around the world so quickly, like we've seen. So that might, I mean, we're having this sort of horrible 6 months now, but what you're saying is this might translate into a long-term change in mindset. One of the things you mentioned was cleanliness, right? So now you've got it's like a risk to go out of your house now. So you need a big payoff to take that risk to go out of your house, right?
Yeah, I think, it's not, risk. I don't think we need to go crazy, but I think it's good to always be extremely paranoid. This is a rehearsal, and it's good to take all the learnings and make sure we apply them so we don't get surprised on the next time, and we can kill these viruses before they do this to us. So I think there's a lot of things here and reactions which has been super fast, and Macau in that sense has been amazing. How quickly they reacted, how quickly everyone's played along in the game to make sure the virus is stopped. And I wish other places in the world would be as good, So I think that we've got learnings that we need to make sure we can continue to apply, but also stimulating all of the innovation to try and make sure that we can stamp on it quicker next time and make sure it doesn't continue.
So I mean, question to everybody: how do you either as an IR, as an operator, or as a product supplier that's supplying, how do you, what sort of changes do you make to make this more, what sort of marketing do you do? How do you get that message across? How do you change the environment that players come into, that they feel, perception is everything, right? So that this could be a point of competition, can't it, between either suppliers or between operators? What can you do, for example, Freddie, as an operator in your property, that when a player walks in or a customer walks in, he goes, oh, this place feels safer to me. This place feels cleaner to me compared to the place down the road. Or with products, it feels like a safer product. Maybe I have to touch it less, or maybe there's something there because perception is very important in driving revenue, right?
Question to me, Andrew, or question to the group?
Question to whoever wants to answer it.
Andrew, I'll have a bit of a stab at that one. I think the way you potentially deliver that message as a property, and the way that you achieve that is via your loyalty club communication, and you provide the player the belief that prior to entering the venue that everything is being done to provide a safe gaming environment that includes not only sanitisation but also positioning, layout, positioning of sanitisation stations, gels, temperature checking of everyone coming in. But equally then you reinforce that on the floor with a mobile product, as we were chatting a little bit about before, whereby you can use your technology, your system, your gaming system technologies to actually, as soon as the machine is carded out or the zero credits on the machine for 15 seconds, as an example, that a staff attendant is informed via their mobile phone. They go over, they sanitise the machine, and I'm not sort of talking as basic as putting a little sash across it, but some sort of symbology to say this machine has just recently been cleaned, it's safe to play. Some of those sorts of things might be ways that start to make players feel comfortable. And I think perception is going to be what a lot of what they see around them. If they see active staff, well-spaced gaming layouts, clean environments, I think that's a big step in the right direction.
let me move on to the whole concept of contactless. And we're hearing this word contactless over and over and over again, right? So technology often races ahead of regulation. I mean, are there maybe against the suppliers, Alan or Michael, like, are there issues around regulation for promoting contactless solutions in your technology?
Well, contactless, what we have heard from operators during the time that casinos are shut down is how do they generate revenue? So we were also looking at slot streaming, for example, but that in terms of regulation has an interest of conflict. As some countries, they allow online gaming, but offshore, not within their own country. And that becomes a conflict that we need to resolve. Can we generate the revenue? Can we allow the locals to play online gaming as well and make the use of the machines that's already there in the casinos and reduce the staff, reduce the people-to-people contact? So that's one of the things. Another thing that was very important and we learned from the Taiwan government is travel history. Given an example, after I traveled to Thailand, I go to a dentist with my healthcare card. They can track down where I was for the last 14 days, and they refuse to treat me. And we're also working with operator on that, a travel history report to the system. So you know where your players coming from. Are they coming from a place that's dangerous with the virus? Yes. And that's it.
Sorry, go ahead. That brings up another question that's been bugging me. You know, there's more. I remember when I first got back to Macau from Europe after ice, I tried to walk into my building, and somebody wanted to take my temperature, and I resisted that. I was like, hang on a minute, you can't take my temperature. What are you going to do if my temperature is too high? You're not going to let me walk into my own building where I live. That within 24 hours, I was letting everybody take my temperature. So it's just a total change in mindset because you see everybody else doing it, so you acclimatize. Now, with all these, contracting tracing apps and the, as you mentioned, travel history and so forth, it always brings up the question about privacy. And, we're just throwing our privacy away. We really are. And I think it tends to be older people that talk about this more than younger people. Younger people are like, I don't have any privacy. There isn't any privacy anymore. But is that still an issue? Or is it just simply that we've got to understand that as time goes on, everything's going to be digital? I mean, Freddie, you talked about everything being digital, your whole life being digital. So everything is traceable. Like we lose paper money and we just have Bitcoin or various cryptocurrencies. All your transactions are registrable. I remember years ago they tried to bring you a card in Australia. You might remember that, Michael. There was a furor over that. That would be a joke these days. So any comment on the loss of privacy? Will people resist, or do you think, particularly in this part of the world, Freddie, that Chinese players will just go, well, that's absolutely fine. There's been no resistance there.
I'm not sure it's Chinese players or anyone else. I think that the debate with privacy hides something else, which is if I'm going to give out privacy, and in most cases we have given it out, but we give it out with no problem if it's useful. So I'm happy giving it out on Google Map because I tell me where to go and how I get to where I want to go. I'm happy giving it out to Amazon because it helps inform what I'm going to watch. Same thing with Netflix. If that's useful, then to the hell with the privacy. If it improves the product that I as a guest receive or I as a client receive, I'm okay giving it out. If it's only for you to be able to market and send me more messages and just nag me and tell other people what I'm doing, then it raises questions. So I think it's always the same thing. People are okay if it's useful for them. If it's not, and if it's purely selfish on the company side, then they're going to raise questions. I think the bigger problem with privacy is the security of the data, the safety of the data, and what you do with it. So, and it's always the same thing when you log onto Facebook, for example, or to an app that says they're going to be on Facebook and they're going to have access to everything you do. You freak out because why would they need that? So if there's a need and if there's an improvement for me as a user, no problem. If it's safe and if you can guarantee again that it's safe, same thing.
So what you're saying is it's simply a trade-off. It's a cost benefit. If I'm getting this benefit, I'm prepared to give away the privacy. I guess the privacy threshold is probably in our own minds is just going down, down, down as time goes on.
Yeah, I think we'll get used to it,
So we have a number of different developments going on in Asia at the moment. We've got, obviously, even in Macau, we've got 2022 coming up. In Singapore, both MBS and Resorts World are committing $3.3 billion to their next phases. We've got development going on in the Philippines. There's a lot of new development going out through Asia. Even Galaxy Phase 3, Phase 4, you go around the grounds and there's a lot going on. Tens of billions of dollars in investment. Again, to anybody, do you think that what sort of changes now? We're talking about innovation. Is this like a circuit breaker? This COVID could it actually make some serious developmental changes in those sort of reactions, in those sort of developments where, hang on a minute, let's stop and rethink this. We might want to change something in that kind of development. Even what's going on in Japan as well. Any thoughts on that from anyone?
Andrew, I think that's an interesting scenario because there's one of our leading markets in Asia, in Singapore, that has a very clearly stipulated floor space regime as compared to the rest of the IR offering. And that thinking is very much driven by an old traditional thinking that if we limit the amount of casino floor space, we therefore limit this property as a gambling venue versus an overall integrated resort. We want it to be seen more as a food and beverage, a shopping venue, a theatre venue, etc. And by the way, you're allowed to have the casino space on the side. The reality is that if you continue that thinking and force venues to fund their overall IR by reduced floor space, governments also run the risk of creating environments that aren't conducive to health and safety in the world that we live. So I think that there needs to be consideration for future developments and ability for casinos to run the right number of slots, the right number of tables, the right environment with the right mix of machines to be safe, and have governments allow them to have the footprint to effectively be able to do that and deliver what the government want to achieve, and that is the tax money they achieve out of it, but also without any cost of any health-related issues.
So does this mean, when talking about floor space, and you alluded to it before, Freddie, about VIP or premium players or a different type of customer coming back first? You know, when I first went to Macau, I think there were 300 junkets. Now there's 90, and there's only really 4 that matter. And VIP went from 80% of Macau's GGR down to 50%, or even a little under 50%. But now, you know, those flag followers, as I call them, those 50,000 flag followers going through the Venetian every day, that don't really add much value at all. We don't really want them now because all they're doing is bringing more people, bringing more bodies, bringing more virus. So the recovery, all the analysts and everybody seems to be talking about, okay, when we reopen, we're going to be very targeted. We're going to be looking for VIP. We're going to be looking for premium mass because we can have 1/10 of the players or even 1/20 of the players, but still get 1/3 of the revenue back. So is there going to be, from an operator's point of view, Frederic, a real focus on VIP and premium and eschewing mass? I know Melco's a little different because you do focus on that anyway, but looking at operators in total.
Well, I think you don't wake up one day and decide you're going to be premium. You know, premium is something that's in the offer. It's in the hotel. It's in the service. It's in the infrastructure. It's in the way you're looking after your guests. You don't just do it like this. It's not Snap. You know. And the products that are very mass are very different from the premium products, and the level of investments that had to get into it in the first place, and the habits that certain people took, you know, are not going to be just working like this. So I think it's going to, as you said, I believe there'll be first the high value guests. I don't think you should be, you know, we should be meeting on, you know, what we call flag wavers or whatever. You know, they're still clients. They still go there. They're still people who want to travel. There will still be a lot of people in China who want to travel because it's unlikely, especially even if they can come to Macau, they won't be able to go anywhere else in Asia probably. So there'll be people wanting to move and travel. I think that's why we need to, and even the premium players enjoy a place that's vibrant. You know, so it's how, and that's when I talk about trusted crowds, how you create that. You know, I think the people that are mass will remain mass and they'll probably suffer a bit longer, and the ones that are more premium should do better at the start. So, you know, will there be a shift? I think there'll be more of a battle for the premium gamblers, but there always were. You know, the issue is more, how solid is the infrastructure, the people, the service, how we look after them, and how we guarantee them that they're safe when they're coming.
You alluded to it, Alan, before, and I can tell you that every single one of these digital things I've been on, without fail, online gambling has come up. And I'm going to bring it up because I just have to bring it up. And, everybody sees that as the panacea. All the online guys, of course, jump on and say, well, this justifies us. All the offline guys say, well, online gambling, wouldn't it be great if we can have it? I mean, let's just get the elephant out in the room, right? Of course, Asia, we have very limited online gambling in terms of regulation. We've got what we've got in the Philippines, but is it time for us to go to regulators and even in somewhere like Macau and say, look, let's do a New Jersey model where the online gaming is connected to existing bricks and mortar operators that have regulation. I mean, if we can do online gaming light, the absolute lightest, or even bring back proxy betting or something. I mean, you mentioned before, Alan, about streaming slots, right? What sort of, maybe go to you, Alan, in terms of from a product point of view, if you wanted to make something that worked online but was the most palatable to regulators, for example, what sort of things are your comments on that?
Well, the company was changing directions. We're starting to looking at social casino gaming. And I think a lot of manufacturers have already started doing that. And it's also very popular in the States as well. Like they play for free, not like the real online, which is they play for real money. But I think it should be regulated in Asia. I mean, you look at China, it's a huge market. Online company, they're making so much money, but their money is not on the table, right? You don't know where it's coming from. So if we can regulate that, it'll definitely help the gaming business. And I think having an app that players can go home after playing in casinos and play the same game that they like in casinos and bundle with marketing and all that, I think it should help both ends. Yeah, and that's just my thoughts.
Well, and even Frederic, talking from an operator's point of view, a bricks and mortars operator point of view, even if you went something as absolutely as simple as, okay, you finish playing on the table, but you can take this tablet up to your room and keep playing on that table via that tablet. I mean, that's very, very light form of online gaming. I mean, is this something that, this is a bit of a question without notice, I apologize, but is this something that you think it's inevitable, but it's a question of whether we wait 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years to see it? I mean, everything's going online.
I think everything is going online, and online gambling and gaming is become quite a big business. You have big companies doing those, and they've done reasonably well during COVID. And let's look at the stock price being done well. I think it's a question of regulation, to be honest. And as you know, there are very few markets in the world that are as highly regulated as we are, and it is all about that. So I think the other thing though is there's a notion of experience which is different when you go online to when you go real, and I think that's you don't just continue the same thing. So again, that needs to be balanced, which is why it's often a slightly different crowd that does play, and they play differently. So it's not just you do this and continue up in your room. But again, this is all going to be driven through regulation.
It was astonishing to me to what one of our reporters asked. I can't remember, it's in one of our stories, but asked the DICJ either at a press conference or something. What about online gaming? Fully expecting the usual response of no way, no how, that's never coming. And the response was, we're looking at it. Now that doesn't mean anything, but at least they said that we're looking at it, which is.
No, but the digital is one of the key things of the new CE, which is great.
Yeah, it's a great shot. I want to talk a little bit about brand segmentation, customization. So years ago, it was about breaking things into segments, but now we keep so much data on our customers that we can have effectively segments of one. We have so many fields and so much data there. Either Michael talk about your systems that you have, or Freddie the information that you keep on individual customers. What is this going to accelerate? Is this time that we have now, and this time to stop and think about things, is it going to accelerate our sort of deep dive into our customers and targeting them as individuals rather than as segments or smaller segments? Is that an ongoing process? I mean, Freddie, you've had decades in branding and marketing, right? So is this, even outside of the gaming industry, is this something that's been going on in the world? We're just getting more and more and more targeted?
Sure, and because we have the tools now to do that, you know, so we have the tools to learn a lot more of what people have bought, what they've done, what they've been looking at. So, you know, you can do mass one-to-one targeting, which is a very, very, you know, you think obviously it has a huge impact on how you manage databases, messages, but also through, you know, in communication itself, the way that people respond teaches you something about them that you can then adapt to the next message you're giving out. So absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know.
And I guess customers are getting more and more demanding, because as they get that, then they want that more. You mentioned before about, well, what's going to get me to get up off my chair? You know, they're getting more and more demanding and more needy, aren't they, our customers? So we're going to have to be more and more responsive.
Yeah, and very often it's not even get off my chair. They don't want to get off their chairs. You know, and why would they? They've been used to not doing so. You know, people bring the web brings stuff to you. Why does the real life not bring stuff to you? You know, so. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll avoid turning that into a question about online gaming, bringing gambling to them. Michael, what about your? I mean, IGT is well known for its systems. I mean, are you adding innovations within your system? You mentioned a couple of things before, but new things you guys have been working on as a result of this time?
Yeah, I think we've expedited some of our developments. In particular, identifying the importance of rewarding a player experience and giving direct value in that land-based environment, given the fact that they've you know, come out of home environment, probably come out of restricted travel, shut down. They're finally in their gaming or casino environment, and that's with products such as Intelligent Offer, whereby we can identify with certain thresholds a player's pattern of behaviour, player spend, either on time on device or total spend, etc. And then you know, knowing the history of that player, visitation of that player, the sorts of likes and dislikes, the offer can be specifically tailored to them. So products like that, Intelligent Offer, just expanding a lot of the stuff that we already do in relation to our bonusing solutions, whereby based upon a player's entering a certain level of time on the device will spend, providing that service window interaction where the service window would open, allow them to play a bonus game, which has some rewards, or if they're playing on a link, if someone on that link was to win a major prize, then they can all share and celebrate that, and they would receive a lower credit value, so they feel that they're involved. So I think that what we're saying is drive value to the player while you have them in your venue, be intelligent and smart with the way you deliver, and we hope that will drive repeat visitation and increase share of wallet.
Let me ask you a question about slightly adjacent areas like skill games and esports and this sort of stuff. We've got all these people staying home playing on their computers, and as generation comes through, younger people, we're seeing this explosion in esports and all this sort of stuff. Are you factoring in not just that, but other things that you're seeing online, maybe not necessarily even in the gaming as in gambling industry, into your thinking? Oh
yeah, so this year we are launching a game which is called Fishing Game. So that's very popular in China, in Southeast Asia, even in the States. So we're actually just GOI certified with that product. And that was actually started online first, and it was actually very successful. We see a lot of companies having that fishing game. So it's a multiplayer game, which I'll show you guys in a bit. And so we bring that to the land base, and we're looking at a bright future this year before the pandemic. We thought we were going to be a good hit, but who knows? Yeah, so we definitely think skill games will be one of the trend, and that's esports as well. Yeah, because we see the younger generation, they're betting on people. Oh, this team will win the NBA 2K, or who will win the next game, right? So that will be a trend too.
You know, I saw on one of my feeds last night the first big gambling scandal for marble racing. I don't know if you guys have followed. I've been following this marble racing, and which is absolutely fascinating. If anyone wants to go out there and Google and go on YouTube, there's a thing called Marbula One, and these marbles go around. It's just amazing. And they had their first scandal the other day because somebody caught in the very back of a frame a hand flicking one of the marbles. So they actually put one of the marbles on. And so there's families going on. We could talk about this for hours, but our time is up. So our time is up on the panel. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And for the people who've been I've been seeing questions come through. We'll get to them at the Q&A at the end. Thank you very much. And so now I'd like to move on to our first Infocus session. So John, you've been very patiently waiting there. Thank you for that. I'd like to hand over to John Van Ward now of IGT, who's going to give us 10-minute presentation. I'll leave over to you, John.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and thanks everyone for attending. So I'm going to be speaking today about the evolution of cashless wagering in casinos, with a primary focus on electronic gaming, but across the whole casino environment. So as Andrew mentioned, I've only been given 10 minutes to cover what can be a pretty broad topic. So we'll cover a little bit on the history of wagering as it relates to electronic gaming. Brief discussion on what cashless wagering is, and then what IGT is bringing to the table in this space under the umbrella brand of Resort Wallet. So again, the topic of today's discussion is innovation in the time of COVID. So it's no secret that one of the largest problems we're facing and have ever faced is about providing that safe, clean gaming environment for players. And as a technology provider, we have to look at the solutions we're providing and make sure that we're providing solutions to that problem while still maintaining your ability to provide an enjoyable gaming experience, which at the end of the day is the reason that the patrons are visiting. So looking at the history of wagering, as I said, in electronic gaming, these devices started as coin-driven machines. It's still part of our accounting nomenclature, coin in and so on. In the early 90s, tokenization occurred on the devices. We got the ability to accept bills, notes, banknotes into the gaming machine. And shortly thereafter, the first form of cashless occurred in these gaming devices, in, ticket out. So Freddie mentioned in his talk that it's not necessarily brand new ideas that bring innovation to gaming. And as we can see there, that's 28 years old now and still kicking strong in terms of offering the ability for players to transfer funds around a gaming floor. Not long after the introduction of Tito, we saw what we consider account-based cashless wagering introduced, and as you can see there, really slow adoption. So that probably ties into the fear of technology and loss of privacy that's been discussed so far. And maybe COVID is, and the zeitgeist of COVID is, the catalyst that is going to see more adoption in this space, because there are significant benefits for both players and venues to move to cashless. From a player perspective, the whole not having to carry cash, the move to contactless, as Andrew mentioned previously, the ability to manage funds at any time in any way that the player chooses to without having to interrupt a gaming session and forcing players to leave a gaming floor. So on the venue side, that obviously has an impact directly on player yield because we're allowing the players more time on the floor. And from an efficiency perspective, the cash handling costs, the cost reduction associated with reducing cash handling in a venue comes along with the territory as well. So from IGT's perspective and what we're offering in this space, our Resort Wallet infrastructure sort of has three pillars behind it. The top left, dark blue, carded cashless is probably what most people most familiar with in terms of an account-based cashless environment where players identify and authenticate themselves using a magnetic stripe traditional player's card. If we move around clockwise, the subsequent step to that is something we call Cardless Cashless, which is the same sort of environment. However, we're now virtualizing the player card and allowing the player to have that stored on their own mobile device. And the final pillar at the bottom is externally funding that player account from an external source, whether that be an e-voucher, a credit card, debit card, or direct from a bank account. So the Resort Wallet itself, the name gives it away, is intended to be used throughout the entire property. So not just as a wagering account for use in electronic gaming, table games, etc., but also retail, hotel, any endpoint that accepts cash at the moment. So from an outgoing perspective, where we can spend cash, we can use Resort Wallet. From an incoming and funding perspective, all the existing funding points, whether that's a cage window, a gaming machine or table, can still be used to deposit funds into the account, but we're adding the ability to do that via an external source as well. And it doesn't really matter throughout that process whether that's done with a traditional card or a digital card. So a little diagram here to explain it a bit further. That cashless wagering account above the line, all of those different vertical areas and cash endpoints, slots, tables, if you have a sports book, if you have retail, hotel, etc., we can access that account either via the traditional carded or the cardless versions. And then below the line, the ability to fund that from the existing internal cash desk, etc., but also those external sources, bank accounts, credit cards, e-vouchers. So if we drill in on each of the pillars, I just want to talk through a couple of customer journeys on each of these areas. So as I said, carded cashless, it's typically what people think about when we discuss cashless. Player needs a cashless account. They need to sign up. We issue them a magnetic stripe card. They deposit funds either at a cage window, in a gaming machine, access their account by inserting their magnetic stripe card. And if we look at the orange and sky blue sections here, they interact with the player display at a gaming machine to authenticate themselves with a PIN and select how much to transfer to the gaming machine. And then they're immediately able to play the machine. So all in all, it's a pretty good flow. It's a pretty good experience for customers. When we move to the next iteration of cardless cashless, it's quite similar. At the start, instead of issuing a magnetic stripe card, we invite the player to download an app or a virtual card direct to the native wallet of the phone. The authentication piece then happens at the player's own device, which is great. Player funds a wallet in the same way as the last step at a cash desk or an EGM. However, the orange and sky blue section here has stepped away from requiring contact with that player interface. So the player can use their own device to connect to the gaming machine. No need to touch the magnetic stripe card reader. We can do that contactless with proximity. And the issuance of the funds to the gaming machine can be done via their own device by either selecting an amount to transfer or pre-configuring a preferred amount to transfer when they connect to the gaming machine, which then gets them to gaming. So slightly improved experience, especially, as I said, with the current focus on cleanliness and contactless experience. So we move around to the final piece here, externally funding that wallet. And this is where we get true cashless and we get true contactless, because the flow's the same. Download the app, authenticate yourself. The next step is tying that external funding source, bank account, voucher, etc., all of those, to your wagering account in the venue and triggering that transfer, which means no handling cash, no going to a cash desk, no lining up at an ATM, any of those things. We can just immediately, on demand, transfer funds from outside of the property into my wagering account within it. And then the remainder is exactly the same. Connect to the gaming machine remotely, no need to touch it, and transfer funds immediately. So, I mean, all of these flows related to electronic gaming, but as I said previously, it's a true resort-wide wallet, so it can be used at all of the endpoints within a venue. So from IGT's IGT Pay, I found it really interesting listening to Freddie's keynote, the discussion about not necessarily needing to be on the leading edge for it to be considered an innovation. We're talking about perfecting things that have been around for a while. An interesting thing that a lot of you probably aren't aware of is the IGT Pay product, which is the gateway between that payment provider and the casino's player account, is a very mature and established product that's been around for since 2013. And that is because of IGT's legacy in lotteries, interactive gaming and sports betting that require those sorts of activities to be funded in this manner. So again, cashless around since 2014, this IGT product since 2013, but I think we've now brought it all together under this Resort Wallet banner to actually provide a really solid innovation that really meets the zeitgeist. So that's me done. Thanks very much. I'll pass it back to Andrew.
Thanks, John, and thanks very much for keeping it on time as well, which is great. We're running bang on time, which is always a good thing for everyone. So in the interest of that, let me hand it straight over to Alan for our second in focus. Alan from Jumbo Technology in Taiwan, over to you.
Thank you. So let me pull up the screen. So for those of you who's not so familiar with Jumbo, I'll give you guys a quick introduction of who we are. We're a very young company. We were founded back in 2000. So this year is actually our 20 years anniversary. However, we're not celebrating because of course, the pandemic. So we're hoping that everybody stays strong and get through this together. So I'll give you guys a quick look of the products. And before that, I would just like to say that because of the pandemic, we actually become more closer with the people from the industry. And Taiwan has opened the exportation of face masks. So we're starting to doing that to our partners. And hopefully if you guys need any help, just let us know, because I know some countries are shortage of face masks. So we're launching this year with the Long Yifa Jackpot Link, and it's a very exciting game. With the trend now is the hold and spin game. And next is the Bao Nifa Jackpot Link. So we have launched this last year. We have pretty good successful performance in the Southeast Asia, such as Philippines and Cambodia. So these are just the 5 games that we have, the Power Series. We have a full product line as well as the ETG. So ETG, we have different configuration with the very unique games such as virtual baccarat, sick ball, roulette, all the standards. And this is what when Andrew asked me earlier about the fishing games. So this is actually, people treat it as skill-based game. It's 6 players, multiplayers. So it brings players that when they win, they actually share the excitement together. And this has very good performance from online industry. And we thought that we could bring it to the land-based as well. So the game is Fortune Cruise. We're now GOI certified for this game. And we were ready for Southeast Asia market. However, for Macau market, we're still trying and working very hard with the regulator at this moment. So going back to social distancing and what solution have we provided? We have started making portable plexi glass shields. So those are tailor fit to the dimension of our products. So we just want to make sure that in case of operation resume, we can provide that as well. In terms of systems, our strategy partner, Gamma, is also a system provider. We're working on member app, member kiosk, dynamic distance. It's the main purpose is to reduce people to people, to reduce the distance. And as well as we're working with suppliers on game sanitization, such as like UVC lights that you can place on gaming machines, so it can automatically sanitize the machines after use. We're also talking to very interesting suppliers as AI intelligence, and also working with surveillance system that can provide temperature scanning, facial recognition, so you know if a player is sick or not. So that's also a few things that we're working on. And lastly would be mobile responder. We just want the staff in the casinos to be alert with what's going on. If somebody is playing the machine, if somebody is getting off a machine, so the janitors or the cleaner can go clean the products. That's it for my presentation. I don't want to take too much time because at this time, I don't think it's the right to really try to upsell a product to anybody. Yeah, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and you've given us an extra five minutes too, which is great for questions. So look, we'll move straight into the Q&A, and we're meant to have 15 minutes, but now we have 20, which is great. So hopefully we can get through them. We do have quite a few here. If anybody else has any questions, please put them in the Q&A, not in the chat box. It's a bit hard for me to find them in the chat box. So guys, please just bear with me while I look through the Q&A. So here's one from Rostam Woody to Freddie. Do you think the premium luxury customers are more or less worried about their digital profile or information being abused? You alluded to it before. A little more on that.
Yeah. Hey, Ross. Depends what you call profile. If it's the data, or if it is, they're actually names. And so I think we're in a business that needs to, protect data as much as possible. And not circulate names of people. I think people are free to whatever they want, and then it's not just to circulate that. But again, as I said, I think the data is a trade-off. Be useful, and I'll give you data. Be not useful, and why should you have it?
Do you think they're more or less worried? Do you think they're more blasé about their data, or they're more focused on protecting it?
I don't think they are more blasé. I don't think you're ever really blasé. I think, again, it depends on age. I think the younger tend to be almost careless sometimes. You see some of the pictures sent out online. It's something I have to teach my kids, and remember that their employees will be looking at these things in the future of them in nightclubs. But beyond that, I think it's probably one thing that the COVID will do is we might be more willing to give, just because the fact that you can trace who have crossed. Again, it depends in the countries, but we've seen Korea, super useful in Korea, super well done in Taiwan. If it's done like this, and it has a use, and that use is to protect me, I'll give it to you, no problem.
Isn't it interesting how attitudes have changed? I mean, there's a funny little meme I saw the other day with a guy lying on a couch like a slob, 2019 lazy bum, 2020 responsible citizen. Another one for you, Freddie. After the outbreak, from an anonymous person, being nice and shy, after the outbreak, will you have greater development in retail and activities beside gambling and hotel accommodation?
We are roaring to have development in all of our activities. We will have more in retail. What we've tried to do is establish a different path in retail and a different environment in retail, with some of the things that we built on the properties, with some of the different retail offers we brought, like the Arsenal that you might have seen. So we're trying to take a slightly different take at what a mall needs to be. Which I think is the key thing when it comes to entertainment. I think we've done a huge amount in entertainment, and yes, absolutely, we'll be continuing that. It's one of the key differentiating factors for us.
Just taking a little tangent off of that, retail is the number one non-gaming expenditure in Macau. I know it's about almost 50% of all non-gaming expenditure. And retail, I always used to ask why, and it's so experiential retail, right? It's experiential. I bought this in Macau. Here's my picture. I can put it on TikTok. I can put it on WeChat or whatever. Do you think retail will change? I mean, now, as we keep on saying, everything's going online. So everybody's buying everything online. Will retail become even more experiential? Will you have to build experience into that retail, or is it, do you think there'll be any changes, or it'll just be much the same afterwards?
No, it's continuing to become more and more and more experiential. If you look at where retail has gone, is malls have become more experiential, and you want something that feels different and is fun to do, with more F&B around it, so you could spend some time. If you look at the stores, I mean, the level of investment in stores is absolutely crazy, especially in luxury brands, and not just stores, but pop-ups. So it's pop-up collections. It's really bringing in the newness constantly, almost to a point which was too much at some point for a lot of the designers. Interesting to see what will happen with all the shows being cancelled now. So it has been a huge amount more experiential. It has become a huge amount more online. And what's interesting is it's online living into offline. But the good news for us in Macau is, all of the luxury retailers we're talking about, have very pessimistic views with Hong Kong and are extremely buoyant with Macau. And I think, it's an area that they all see as a huge amount of growth for us and for them is Macau. And there's a real glimmer of hope, if only we could be open,
Here's a question for the suppliers for either IGT or Jumbo from Bonnie Du, who says, are there going to be less gaming machines in casinos? Is it going to be more spread out? And, you've already answered this, but the question also, what are you doing in the coming game design to make players more at ease? Michael, you mentioned some of those things, but is it just generally going to be less machines per square foot? Is it going to be the way it's going to be moving forward?
I think so. Bank design will drive that, Andrew, that physically you'll just have less boxes on the floor. It will be important, though, that you do still provide a level of flexibility in the game choice, and I think therefore packages such as multi-game, multi-denomination become an important part of your overall floor mix. And I certainly think within the VIP and the premium end player experience, the ability to have a multi-game solution to suit the needs of players who are worth significant return but may only visit once every 3 or 4 weeks, but you've got that game available because it's part of your multi-game library. And I wonder as to whether or not this reinvigorates the time of the floor manager download config server-based gaming, whereby because you've got physically less boxes, but you have a greater library available to you, is that something that now resurfaces again as another product that operators are interested in?
That's an interesting point, actually. Man. Here's one from our very own Ben Blaschke. What's Ben got to say? Question for Michael. Again, Alan spoke about some regulatory issues in trying to introduce new products or concepts aimed at addressing COVID concerns. Has IGT faced similar issues?
I think the challenge has been a little bit twofold. One is the operators' need to drive to those solutions prior to COVID may not have been as great, and therefore their engagement with the regulator wasn't as strenuous or as vigorous in relation to some of these technologies. I think in the COVID world we live now and the future that we're going to look at for the next 18 months to 2 years suggests that the ears might be much more open for our regulators to look at solutions that they may have considered to be some level of risk and some concern. Because remember, a lot of our regulators come from a view of trying to minimise in some way and reduce exacerbation and spend on the floor and an ability for people to be able to top up an account. There was a lot of thinking, well, we don't want them to do too much of those sorts of things. The world we live in now is very different. We're doing those things and doing them safely through functionality that's available through system providers and manufacturers is something that is going to benefit a lot. So I think while we may have had some challenges, I think this is the best time to move on some of those engagements.
Here's one from Diego Jonas Bautista. How do we handle people's, this is one other one for you, Freddie, probably. How do we handle people's refusal to give up some privacy for us to strictly enforce measures to a safe environment? So now we're asking for more information from people. What if they refuse? How do we handle that without alienating them? Difficult question, isn't it?
Well, there's 2 ways. One is to accept it, and the second one is to not accept it. And I guess it depends what that private information is. I think there's a level of things you'll want to know. We all sign now when we go anywhere saying that we haven't been in the last 14 days anywhere. Look at Taiwan. This is what people know. And I think a lot of this will probably be done actually at the border gates, I'd imagine now. So I think that it might not be as big a problem as we think, because they will come in having been allowed in, and I trust there'll be a lot of check-ins of what's happened before.
Yeah, I saw on the TV the other day they opened the pubs in Britain now, and if you want to go to a pub in the UK, as you walk in the door, you've got to sign your name and phone number, and so if there's an outbreak, they know everyone who was there at the pub. I mean, imagine that, to go to a pub now, you've got to sign in and give them your details. People are willingly doing it because they won't drink, but like you said before, the benefits there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Here's a long one I haven't read yet before reading it out live. That's always dangerous, but let's go for it. Anonymous attendee, with the pandemic still occurring, how can we make sure that even if we innovate our business or online gaming, we won't lose any of our players or customers in different markets, which could cost us into closure, and which we hope not, but because customers are also affected by the pandemic and their source of funds. I think there is, if I read that right, they're alluding to the effect on the wider economy, right? So how can we make sure we innovate, we won't lose our players? Like we do these changes that then makes players less likely to come because they've got less money, and you're putting up barriers. You were talking before about not having barriers, right? So I don't quite know how to pose that one. Anyone got any ideas on that one?
I think, Andrew, it's this is a general economic question, which is, if with an economic crisis there, yes, people will be hurt, and they'll be hurt with their wallets, and then they have to make choices. I think what we have to do is make sure we attract the best potential guests, that those, a lot of these will tend to suffer less or have more disposable income, and make sure the experience that we provide them is better than ever. Yeah,
I mean, we're going to have to ramp up. My prevailing wisdom, my guess for what it's worth, is we're going to have a little bit of pent-up demand when borders open, and we'll get a bit of a rush, but then it'll quickly settle down, and we've got a long climb ahead of us. I mean, your boss, Freddie, Lawrence, said it himself, didn't he? He said that famous quote that we've quoted a few times of him, this is going to go on for a very long time. So that recovery.
Yeah, it is. Don't forget, though, that people have, they are also stuck not being able to travel or do things. So, it won't just be short term. There'll be, Macau will be, as long as, and that's why the importance of everything that you do around is attractive for everyone to come and do. So there'll be, that will become as important as ever.
I mean, if you look at the last time we took a massive shock to the industry was 2015, and we actually hadn't recovered by 2019. We were 97% recovered, but it took us 4 years. So who knows how long this will take. Anyway, on to the next question from Silla Jung, who says, for Frederic, what do you think your property should invest in now in terms of communication and branding? Where are your communication and branding efforts going?
So, to be honest, right now, I think the best branding and communication is none. I think and this is what I'm alluding to in my speech, people who go out and spend money on advertising now and speak get it wrong, because you can't understand, can't pretend to understand what's going through in people's heads, and those who've suffered, those who've, and I think that a lot of the brands, unless it's necessity, like food, fine, but a lot of the rest has really been awful. I encourage you to look type on Google and look at all of the COVID ads look the same. They've made a video compilation of that, and honestly, it just drives you insane. I think the best communication right now is action, so that's what we do with sending volunteers out. It's action. It's what LVMH did with the gels. Action. It's what Vistin Bouli did when they gave out soaps to people in need. It's actually going and helping and doing things. And that's the best thing that you can do right now, rather than go out and spend money on advertising, which anyway they can't come. So it's all about frustration.
Well, you used a good word in your keynote, gooey for those ads. They're just gooey and sappy, or whatever you want to say. I've actually seen that all the COVID ads look the same. I would encourage everybody here to look. It's quite hilarious. Every ad's exactly the same, and it's so inauthentic. And COVID's been a great accelerator, and we've had this move to authenticity through social media. So you come across inauthentic. It's very, 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 very bad.
Yeah, I think that's where the aftermath will be interesting. How people would have got used to authenticity. It's how you do that. Again, what I said, without really being awful. But I think if you look at people's creativity, just look at TikTok. There's some unbelievable things people have been up to. So I think there's a lot of inspiration for us to take from there, and show how you experience our results for real, and how they're fun really.
Here's the next one from Joe Pisano. Hi, Joe. Hope you're doing well wherever you are. I presume you're in the Philippines, maybe. Good to see you. It'd be great to catch up again. Question for John. So maybe you can unmute yourself there, John. With IGT Pay, in order to access external funds, does the property need an acquiring bank, or does it need an EMI license from the central bank?
We can support either. We're obviously in different jurisdictions and with different business capabilities. We have to be able to operate in a number of different configurations, so it wouldn't be a problem, and we'll tailor it based on like I said, the capability of the business and the jurisdictional requirements.
Very good, thank you. Question from David Steike from IAG. Question for Alan. Does he think we will see slot jackpots involving many countries of Asia all in the same jackpot pool to create a monster jackpot? Obviously, there are regulatory issues across this to have a co-mingled jackpot pool. So we had, that brings my mind to Megabucks in the US, right, in Vegas. Do you think, Alan, that's a possibility? Obviously some big regulatory issues, but wouldn't it be fantastic if you had one?
Well, yeah. Well, before the pandemic, I think that would be the trend, because you see IR is putting, say, 50 millions with 100 machines. Then you will see another IR across the street putting, say, 20 machines with 50 million. Less machine, bigger jackpot. And then you'll see 100 million coming up. So it's a marketing strategy. But now I think people are thinking about living it more practical ways. And with the economy, do they actually have that much to spend anymore? So and with the regulation as well. So to me personally, I don't think that would be the trend. Yeah. But maybe Frederic would have a different point of view as an operator.
Well, Frederic, you've got properties in Philippines, Cyprus, and Macau. Wouldn't it be great to have some slot jackpots across all of them?
Yeah, and regulations, Andrew.
Yeah, let's go back to the online gaming discussion. We need to get a regulator on, don't we? Let me put that down on the to-do list. Another question from
It's
Joe.
the same online. You know, there's the same issue online. Even if it's not properties, you have the same issue online where countries' regulations mean that it's not across the board. You know.
Oh wow, we've got a whole heap of questions coming through. So sorry, Joe. You got one. I'm going to come back to your second if there's time. There probably won't be. Anonymous, how would suppliers handle AML regulations going in a cashless environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's not unfamiliar to us. Like I said, the IGT Pay side of things has been around since 2013. It's not, it's something we've had to face from day one, and everything moving electronically makes AML far easier than cash anyway.
Right. I saw at ICE North America, and I've forgotten the gentleman's name, but the guy who's in charge of the New Jersey regulator, give a great talk for about 20 minutes. And he was a huge proponent of online. Obviously, they have the model with the online attached to the bricks and mortar casinos. And he was saying that, anyone raising AML or issues around online, you're just joking. It's much better online because you've got all that, data and all that record keeping. So that's a bit of a furphy, that one. Here's one from Gadbert Mercado. With the existing social distancing rules where operators are operating at 30 to 50% of capacity, what innovations or strategies can one do to maintain profitability? Odds are still going to be the same for the machines, and even if someone wins, the losses, the operators will likely widen. So effectively, it's a question to say, look, reduce capacity on the floor. How can we maintain our profitability? I've got some thoughts on that, but I'm asking the questions, not giving the answers. So any thoughts on that? Less headcount, basically, isn't it?
I mean, I suppose you've got to manage your exposure a little bit, Andrew, in relation to the style of products that you do offer, and in particular, if you're talking high-end jackpots. Is it a situation where potentially they don't become, there's not as many of those products available, there's potentially more standalone progressive products available which have a lower level of jackpotting to the player? Do you reserve some of that high-end jackpot product for this time being and maybe introduce that back on the floor at a later date? I think you've got to be really cautious about touching RTP because a player experience is critical. And I think as soon as you start to touch return to player, if it feels different to how it felt 2 months ago, it's not going to be a good player experience because we wound it back from 92 to 89. The players will pick up on it straight away. So I would avoid anything like that. I just think we've got to be smart about how we manage our jackpotting and rewards on the floor.
Mm. I could say, we don't have enough time, but I could say something about targeting bigger customers and eschewing the flag followers, but I raised that before, so I won't go there. A question for Mr. John. If your solution is implemented, would the guests be able to stay linked and gamble when they're relaxing in hotel rooms or anywhere else inside the same casino hotel? John, you need to unmute yourself there.
Yep. No, this solution's providing the wagering account, not the gambling experience. The gambling endpoints are the same.
Okay, no problem. And we probably just got time for one. Let me skim. We have a whole bunch here. Oh, Nelson. All right, I'll give you your question, Nelson. Nelson from Macau Business. Freddie, it actually gives you an opportunity to discuss this and give some logic behind it, which I know we've talked privately about it. A question from Mr. Van Clare, namely, if you could provide some information about the revamp to the House of Dancing Water show. It's relaunching, I believe, in January is the plan. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, January ready for Chinese New Year.
Is there any information you can give on? I mean, obviously you can't give away secrets and all of that. We understand, but is there any comments you want to make about that? Obviously, that was a difficult situation. Playing to small, very, very small crowds.
Yeah, I think the show is 10 years old. And welcomes 6 million people. So it's an opportunity for us to do a few things. One is to relook at the show itself and reimagine it, and we'll be working with Franco to do exactly that. So it will still be the House of Dancing Water, but with fresh new acts, look at what's been developing over the last 10 years, and fix some of the things that Franco always wanted to look at. And then the second thing is technology has moved on a huge amount in 10 years in theater and entertainment. So we did an investment last year of about $14 million on the theater itself, on the platforms, on some of the lighting, and it actually did a huge difference to some of the scenes. We actually had to rework areas of them because we were seeing things differently because the lighting and sound was so much better. So we'll be taking that to the next level. So we'll take Franco. Franco's already working on it. He's been working on it, and will come here to continue as soon as he can be with us in Macau. And I'm sure we'll be teasing certain things as they evolve, as we train the cast, and to reopen in January. So I have to be a little patient.
Yeah, I was quite sympathetic to you on that one, because it was a very difficult situation when you obviously. Our visitation in Macau has gone from 108,000 a day to under 1,000 a day, and there's just nobody. Just walk the streets of Macau, there's no one out there, and it must be demoralising for artists of that calibre to be playing to very small crowds after the show being very well attended for many years. It's the only show. People ask me about entertainment in Macau, and I say for some reason the House of Dancing Water has got the golden touch, because it's been a very successful show over that 10 years. Lots of other shows haven't in Macau. And I guess you turned a negative into a positive. You said, all right, well, look, we'd rather this situation here, but if it is going to be here, let's take the opportunity to revamp it and make it better, and bring those guys back for a new show, which I think, honestly, you need to be applauded for doing that. So I don't think you see it as a negative at all. I think it's a great opportunity, and lots of companies are doing that, yeah.
I mean, I think, for the people who have seen it, and for the people who want to see it, it will be exciting. It's bringing more excitement. So the other thing, as you said, is for a cast to play to a very small audience is actually not very good. And this is a complicated show which we need to keep on running. Otherwise, it's actually the level of danger and craft that the cast means they need to train constantly. So we have to keep it. We have to keep them trained. And if they're training in front of an empty audience, it's it's not a show for them. So turning that, as you said, into making something fresh and exciting for everyone.
If there is anybody in the audience that's from outside of Macau and hasn't seen that show, I'm going to give you a bit of a plug here, but I think it's well deserved. Really should go and see it. It is a world-class show, and the fitness and the ability of those people are just amazing. And I can imagine, as you said, you'd have to keep training all the time. You couldn't just start, stop. They get injuries and things like that. It's just as good, if not better, than anything on the Vegas Strip for sure. So good luck with that when it reopens. All right. Well, we're out of time. I apologise to the people who we didn't get to your questions. There are a bunch here, and so obviously people were keen to, but we have run out of time. So I'd like to say thank you, a very big thank you to all the audience for being here, and thank you to our speakers, Mr. Frederic Van Clare, Chief Creative and Brand Officer for Melco Resorts and Entertainment, Michael Cheers, Sales Director for Asia of IGT, Alan Hugh, AVP of Business Development, Jumbo Technology, and John Van Wood, Senior Manager for Systems Sales at IGT. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for being here. And I would like to just say that this is the first, as I said before at the beginning, but for anybody who wasn't here at the very beginning, this is the first of 4 events for G2E Asia Online Conference. one in July, one in August, one in September, and one in October. So make sure you definitely come along to the August, September, and October ones, which will have different themes. And for more information on that, of course, there'll be EDMs going out to your emails, and visit G2EAsia.com. And also, this is our co-presentation with IAG's game platform. For more information on that, please visit IAGgame.com and go and join up there. And I think that's about it. So thank you very much for attending. I think we've had a good discussion, and we look at that 5:35. We finished bang on time. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Andrew.